Subscribe to the channel now, and you will enjoy news stories every day. Let's get started. Jason had always considered himself a patient man. He grew up in a small town outside Boston, raised by parents who believed in loyalty, honesty, and the sanctity of marriage. He took those values with him when he fell in love with Natalie. After a whirlwind courtship, they got married and moved to a suburban neighborhood within Boston's city limits, close enough to enjoy the energy of the city, but peaceful enough to raise a family. They had two children, Ava, who was 8, and Samuel, who had just turned 6. For the first 5 years, their relationship seemed solid to Jason. Sure, they argued now and then about finances, about how to discipline the kids, about whose family they should visit over the holidays, but nothing out of the ordinary. In Jason's eyes, they were navigating the usual challenges of modern family life. He never suspected that something darker lay beneath the surface. An unexpected confession. It was late on a Friday evening when Jason received a text message from Danielle, one of Natalie's close friends. He'd known Danielle almost as long as he'd known Natalie. She had a bright smile and an infectious laugh. She and Jason got along well. So well, in fact, that Natalie sometimes teased them about being best buds. When his phone buzzed, Jason glanced at the screen. Danielle, 10:24 p.m. Hey, can we talk? It's important. Jason felt a flicker of worry. He texted back, and they agreed to meet at a small cafe near Harvard Square the next day. Danielle's urgency unsettled him. She was usually so lighthearted. What could be so serious? Sitting at a corner table, Danielle looked pale and uncharacteristically nervous. She fiddled with her coffee cup, avoiding eye contact. Jason, quietly, Danielle, you're scaring me. What's going on? She took a deep breath and finally raised her eyes to meet his. Danielle, I've been debating whether or not to tell you this for months. I can't keep it to myself anymore. Jason, you're freaking me out. Is this about Natalie? Is something wrong? Danielle swallowed hard. Danielle, a few years ago, Natalie cheated on you. It wasn't a long affair, as far as I know, but it happened. And it wasn't just a fling. It lasted a few months. Jason felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. His hand tightened around the handle of his coffee mug. Jason, what are you saying? That was 5 years ago. How do you know? Danielle, she confided in me. Back then, I told her to stop, to come clean, but she never did. She promised it was over, and I didn't want to destroy your marriage by saying anything. I have proof. Messages, photos, nothing explicit, but enough to show they were more than just friends. Jason's heart thundered in his chest. He thought of his children, of the house they'd built, of the countless I love yous. Could all of it have been tainted by Natalie's secret? Danielle, lowering her voice, please don't tell Natalie I told you. I'm not doing this to hurt her, but I couldn't just sit there and pretend anymore. I don't want you thinking your wife is some saint who's never done you wrong. You deserve to know the truth. Jason just stared, speechless. The weight of the truth. In the days that followed, Jason found himself in a fog. He'd lock himself in the home office, scrolling through the evidence Danielle had provided, cryptic texts between Natalie and a man whose number Jason didn't recognize, a couple of photos of them together at a bar, apparently unaware that someone had snapped a picture. The timestamps were from years ago when Ava was barely 3 and Samuel was still a toddler. He felt sick. He wondered if the affair ended because Natalie lost interest, or if it ended because she was afraid of getting caught. Questions bombarded him. Why had she never told him? Could she have kept other secrets too? He tried to go about his daily life, taking the kids to school, responding to work emails, cooking dinner, but the knowledge weighed him down like a lead cloak. Every time Natalie smiled at him or asked about his day, he'd force himself to answer calmly, even though inside he felt like he was on the verge of screaming. Finally, he realized he couldn't continue living a lie. He had to confront his wife. Breakfast confrontation. It was a Tuesday morning, and the family was seated at the kitchen table. Natalie looked bright-eyed, sipping her usual cup of green tea. The kids chattered about their upcoming day. Ava had a field trip, and Samuel was excited for a soccer tryout. Jason stared at his plate of scrambled eggs, heart hammering. Once the kids left the table to grab their backpacks, Jason cleared his throat. Jason, Natalie, we need to talk. She glanced at him, immediately sensing the tension in his voice. Natalie, okay, what's wrong? Jason waited until the kids were safely in the next room. Then he leaned forward and spoke in a low voice. Jason, I know about the affair, the one you had 5 years ago. Natalie's face went pale and she set her cup down so abruptly that hot tea splashed onto the table. Natalie, what are you talking about? He reached for his phone, showing her the messages Danielle had sent. Jason, voice shaking with anger, don't lie to me. I have proof. From your so-called friend. She gave me everything. Natalie's eyes welled with tears. She stared at the photos, the texts, and finally bowed her head in shame. Her cheeks flushed a deep red. Natalie, I'm so sorry. I should have told you. It was a mistake, Jason. It was a terrible, stupid mistake, but I ended it. I've felt guilty every single day since then. Jason, guilty? That's all you have to say. You've let me go on believing I had a loyal wife, the perfect partner. This entire time, you've been lying to me. Natalie, voice trembling, I know I lied. I know I hurt you. If you want a divorce, I understand. I won't fight it. Jason's anger flared up like a wildfire. Jason, a divorce is the least of my worries right now. You betrayed me once. How do I know you won't do it again? How can I trust anything you say? You've stolen 5 years of my peace of mind. Natalie sat in silence, tears streaming down her face. The kids' voices drifted in from the living room, a stark reminder that this marriage wasn't just about them. It was about a family. Natalie, whispering, I'm so sorry. Jason stood up, his chair scraping the floor. Jason, I'm going to work. We're not done talking about this. He grabbed his keys and left. A painful decision. That day at the office, Jason couldn't focus. The usual line of code he was working on for a software project blurred before his eyes. His mind was consumed with betrayal, anger, and heartbreak. He remembered how Natalie had insisted on seeing a family counselor when the kids were little, someone she admired and claimed could solve any marital dispute. But this was beyond therapy sessions. No counselor could remove the memory of this betrayal. By lunchtime, Jason made up his mind. He would move out, at least for a while, and stay with his parents in the countryside near Plymouth. He needed distance from Natalie to think clearly. That evening, he called her from his office. Jason, I'm not coming home tonight. I'm staying at my parents' place for a few days, maybe longer. Natalie, tearful over the phone, I understand, just please come back. We can figure this out together. He hung up without responding, driving 2 hours to his parents' home in near silence. The entire drive, he replayed Natalie's confession, feeling both a sense of numbness and a lingering fury he couldn't shake. A year of separation. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Jason ended up staying at his parents' house for nearly a year. It was a small, modest home nestled among pine trees, a far cry from the busy suburbs. His mom and dad tried their best to be supportive without prying too much, but they could see the pain in his eyes. During that time, Natalie would sometimes call, asking if there was any hope for reconciliation. She sent messages apologizing, explaining how she'd changed since the affair, how it had truly been a one-time lapse. She claimed she'd do anything for a second chance. Yet, Jason was stuck in a whirlwind of emotions. Every time he thought about their happy memories, the bitterness of her secret overshadowed them. He thought about the kids, how they asked when Daddy was coming home. And the guilt gnawed at him, but each time he considered moving back, he pictured Natalie in someone else's arms and his stomach twisted into knots. Work was his only escape. He dove into his software projects, often working long hours remotely. On weekends, he'd meet Ava and Samuel halfway so they could spend time together at his parents' place. They'd go hiking, roast marshmallows, watch movies. Still, he felt torn seeing them without Natalie, uncertain if this was their permanent new normal. Confronting the future, now almost a year after he first walked out, Jason sits on the back porch of his parents' house, a cup of black coffee in hand. It's early morning, the sun just rising over the distant treetops. He's been staying here long enough that the old squeaky rocking chair feels like his own, but he knows he can't live in limbo forever. The question weighs on him, should he forgive Natalie and try to rebuild their marriage, or let go and file for divorce once and for all? As if on cue, his phone buzzes. It's Natalie. He considers ignoring it, but something in him compels him to pick up. Jason, hello. Natalie, softly. Hey. I know it's early. I wanted to hear your voice. I miss you. Jason, I miss the kids too. Natalie, I'm taking them to the aquarium next weekend. They've been asking if you could come. Jason exhales, closing his eyes. He can almost see the kids' excited faces at the thought of exploring sea life. Jason, I'll think about it. Let me check my schedule. There's a silence on the line, the kind that's heavy with unspoken feelings. Natalie, if you ever decide, if you want to talk about us, really talk. I'm here. He clenches his jaw. Part of him wants to unload months of anger to tell her exactly how she's made him feel. Another part of him wants to find a path forward for the sake of the children. But can he live with the image of her betrayal forever? Jason, all right, I'll let you know. He ends the call to forgive or move on. Inside, Jason's mother is fixing breakfast, pancakes as usual. She sees him step into the kitchen, shoulders slumped, eyes downcast. Mom, still no clarity. Jason sighs, none. He pours himself another cup of coffee. For the thousandth time, he replays the question in his mind. Should he try to forgive the one mistake she claims happened years ago, or is that betrayal a permanent scar he can't move past? His father walks in, sets a hand on Jason's shoulder. Dad, whatever you choose, make sure it's your decision, not just because you feel guilty or pressured. You need to decide if you want to rebuild that trust or if it's too broken. Jason gives a small nod. He steps onto the porch again, letting the fresh air clear his head. He thinks about the kids. Ava's bright smile, Samuel's curiosity. A part of him wants to at least try counseling, if only for their sake. Another part screams that it's too late, that the damage was done the moment he discovered Natalie's dissection. Still, a year of separation has shown him that living apart from her isn't as simple as he hoped. He's lonely, even if he won't admit it. He misses the little things, the way she'd laugh at his silly jokes, the way she'd snuggle up to him during a movie. But he also remembers the pain of finding out she cheated, of seeing physical proof that he wasn't the only man in her life. With his coffee growing cold in his hand, Jason makes a silent promise to himself he'll meet with Natalie. No kids, no outside interference, and speak honestly about everything. If they can't find a middle ground, he'll let her go for good. And if there's some spark left, some genuine remorse that he can believe in, maybe they can start anew. Yet, even as he considers it, he isn't sure if his heart can truly forgive. He looks out at the sunrise and wonders if this new day might bring an answer, because the one thing he does know is that he can't live in between forever. It's either rebuild or walk away for good. And as the sun finally breaks over the trees, he closes his eyes, remembering the life he once had, trying to decide if it's worth saving or best left behind.